All right, y'all, we did it. We got rid of the little ones. Why don't you go ahead and open your Bibles to Song of Songs? No, I'm just kidding. I double-checked that joke with my wife, and she was insistent I not do that one. The Holy Spirit convicted me that it was the right time. Hey, good morning, everybody. If you do not know who I am, my name's Ethan. I'm the worship pastor here at the Vineyard Church of Holly Springs. I don't speak very much, so this is weird. If you're like, this is not someone with the last name Pavel or Brandt, it is a little weird to see someone else up here, but I'm going to be keeping us going on our message series with Meals with Jesus. As you can see on our lovely graphic, if you were here last week, you noticed Jesus was more European, white. He was more white. And so Leah was gracious enough to put in a few more prompts in there to change that for us to make it a little more realistic. I bring that up because I had my own experience with ChatGPT this week. It was for a graphic that was on the cutting room floor, did not make the cut for the sermon. The point did not land very well. But I wanted a combination, since we're going to be talking about the Last Supper today, and I wanted some combination of Jesus and bread together. And this is what ChatGPT gave me when I did that. So this is important. So the one on the right, that version of Jesus, again, we're talking European, white, Catholic. It is not the Jesus I was hoping for. And I didn't ask for the toaster either. ChatGPT just took some creative license with that. And so he gave me that. I don't know. And so then I asked, okay, can you make it less white? So now we have wheat. Not quite what I was asking for. So I just wanted to share that. With ChatGPT, you have to be very specific, or say not the bread. So there we go. That's on my computer now. Don't know what I'll use it for, but maybe someday. Okay. So Meals with Jesus. I got stuck with what we called in our preaching team the meal that changed everything. No pressure, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. As you can see, we have the 3 points that Josh mentioned last week: the incarnation, hospitality, and transcendence. All of those are going to play huge roles in what we're talking about today with the Last Supper. And I do think it's funny because Josh hates 3-point sermons, and yet he just teed it right up for me. That as I was putting it together, it was like, well, these actually all three fit really well. And so I didn't even have to make the graphic. This is great. So I don't have a comeback for that. I'm not the pastor. I'm only going to do 3. So here we go. I'm going to start by reading from Luke 22. This is going to be verses 14 through 20 for us. So starting in the NIV version. When the hour came, Jesus and his apostles reclined at the table. And he said to them, I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. For I tell you, I will not eat it again until it finds fulfillment in the kingdom of God. After taking the cup, he gave thanks and said, take this and divide it among you. For I tell you, I will not drink again from the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of God comes. And he took bread, gave thanks and broke it, and gave it to them, saying, this is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. In the same way, after the supper, he took the cup, saying, this cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you. So I'm going to start here with that last sentence, that this cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you. But just real quick, this is going to be a shorter one, right? This is going to be shorter than we're used to, and my hope is that we're going to enter into a more extended ministry time and time of communion together. So just give me your attention for a little bit, guys. I promise. It's not going to be long. All right? Cool. So let's start with that new covenant that we're talking about. This is where I think transcendence comes into play. So when we talk about a new covenant, the implication is that there is an old covenant, that there is a covenant that has been in place that is no longer going to be in place. That covenant, in this case, is the promise that God made to the Israelites back in the Old Testament through Moses, that they would be his chosen people and they would be set apart through a series of laws that was given to them. Typically, this is known as the Mosaic Law, but for our purpose today, we're just going to call it the Old Covenant. There's a lot of covenants in the Old Testament. We're just going to call this one the Old Covenant. Sound good? All right. So this old covenant, it's a set of laws and teachings, and they became the bedrock of what is the Jewish faith. And all of these laws, known as the Mosaic Law, they would have been followed by Jesus and his disciples in their time. So for example, the rules against eating pork, wearing multiple different kinds of fabrics, knowing that you can't boil a baby goat in its mother's milk. That's a new one I didn't know until getting ready for this sermon. Very specific rules that they were all told to follow. And now Jesus is coming before them and saying, okay, we're going to put that aside now. And there's going to be a new covenant, or a new way of God relating to his creation. And this isn't necessarily coming out of nowhere. This has been spoken of in the Old Testament multiple different times leading up to this point. It says in Jeremiah 31:31, "The days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel and with the people of Judah." So the bread and the cup that Jesus is offering now to them, it's indicative of what's about to happen. His body is going to be broken. There's blood that's going to be shed for the forgiveness of their sins. And that sacrifice is going to completely transcend the way that the disciples and all of Israel have related to God up to this point. And this is important. It's important to know this because this is part of the reason, or the entire reason, why we don't follow the Old Covenant or the Mosaic Law ourselves. It was largely overwritten by the life and sacrifice of Jesus. So this is just a quick apologetics lesson. If people come up to you in your day-to-day life and they start talking about how Christians like to cherry pick, the certain verses that we follow, why you eat pork, you shouldn't be eating pork. The Old Testament says not to. This is why that's not true, is because Jesus is taking this very Jewish tradition and he's Christianizing it for his followers today. So this is why many of us are probably wearing blended fabrics and we don't remember what the dimensions of the temple are supposed to be. But an important second point here is that not all of the Mosaic Law has been overwritten by this, because there are certain teachings within it that Jesus doubles down on or brings up himself in the New Testament, and those are the ones that we continue to follow today. Think important ones like don't murder, don't steal, love your neighbor. A lot of the bedrock things that we still understand to be part of the Christian faith that Jesus still taught as part of the new covenant and the moral law that we follow today. So that's what the purpose of this is. This meal that they're coming together to share is literally changing the entire way they followed their religion up to this point. Jesus is moving them from rules into relationship. No longer do we have this God who primarily relates to his people through law, but now we have a present, living, incarnate God among his people. He's a God who shares meals with his people now. He's lived life just like they lived it, and he's suffered just like they've suffered. And no longer do we and they have to fear about that relationship with God being fractured by their own doing, because Jesus has taken that option completely off the table for them now. We always talk about the table being central, and I believe there was a series about what was on the table right before I got here. And I think it's important to remember what's on the table and what's off the table just as much sometimes. And so that sort of that fracturing, that space, that's off the table now. We can no longer screw things up with God. We do, don't get me wrong, we do. But he's taking care of that for us because he knew we would. And so the table is just as much about what's on it and what's not on it. What I'm trying to illustrate here, there's this connection between this moment of transcendence, of their entire faith changing, and the moment of incarnation, because they're working in tandem to change everything. We're taking a God who exists completely outside of creation, and he's choosing oneness with his people. He's choosing to repair what we've broken, and with no expectation or quid pro quo of anything to come after. And he's doing it at the table. He's doing it in a spot of familiarity and intimacy with his people. The Mosaic Law, like I was mentioning earlier, that was a way for Israel to be really intentionally set apart from the rest of the world. And now, Jesus, at the table, through the bread and the cup, he's inviting us into a new way to be set apart just by following him. just by following after what he's commanded us to do. And it's way easier, guys. Way easier. I cannot overstate how much easier it is. And granted, this is a tough moment for Jesus. He knows what's about to happen. His future is known to him, and he can see the anguish that is about to come. Can you imagine the difficulty of being able to, in any way, enjoy this moment at the table with his disciples, knowing that there's one particularly who's about to do something really not cool, and knowing that his death is just around the corner? But I think, as I've been reading this and studying it, that it really matters that he's doing it specifically at the table in this moment, because he's taking a moment to show hospitality and to be in community with his disciples before the tragedy that's about to occur. And I think that it's emblematic of how we're supposed to face some of the hardest things that this world has to throw at us. Many of you know I used to work as a hospital chaplain before my daughter was born. And I was going to say one of the pros. One of the things about it is you watch a lot of people pass away. That's just the nature of the beast. And one of the hardest things always was the rooms you get invited into where it's just one person. It's the person who's lying in the hospital bed. There's no family. There's no loved ones, people who knew them. They're just purely alone. And nurses and staff have tried to get in contact with people, and they've either gotten no response or they've gotten a response and the people said no, that they weren't coming. And it's an uncomfortably large amount of those that you see at the hospital. And it never failed that every time I would go into those rooms and I would hold hands with this person who's typically not conscious or not aware. It was usually the very final moments before they passed away, and I don't think there was a single time where I didn't cry in those rooms. And I'm not much of a crier. My wife can attest to that. It takes an awful lot. But I think every single time I was in those rooms, the Lord showed me, I felt in anguish. I felt this feeling of just the way that God cries out when he sees this kind of brokenness in the world, that no one should have to face moments like that on their own. And that's part of the beauty of the table, right, is that it's this great impactful moment that isn't shared alone, and I think it's emblematic of what it's actually supposed to look like, because I think God weeps for his people in moments of loneliness and isolation when that's not the way we were designed to be. Truly, I don't believe it is. And so I saw that an awful lot, and I would always feel that sorrow and that anguish that I think that God felt for his people and his creation. And granted, I don't know how those people live their lives, right? It's entirely possible they deserve to be alone in those moments. Maybe, I don't know. What I do know is that actually no one, I don't think, deserves to be alone in those moments. That I think there's, God showed us a grace and forgiveness at the table to share that table with Judas, who was about to do the most awful thing possible, to even invite him, to welcome him, to wash his feet before that moment is an incredible gesture of grace and forgiveness that I think, again, is emblematic of how we're supposed to live our lives. Another example from the hospital was sort of the exact opposite. There was a pastor and his entire family who were there. The pastor had suffered a problem with his heart. Too many energy drinks while driving. And he and his family were there, and they were there for a few hours while they had been there, and they were waiting to go into surgery. This pastor's entire church came to the hospital. It was probably close to 200 people. We did not have that much space in waiting rooms, and we had people waiting like complete wings away. He was ready to go into heart surgery, and we had people over in like neuro, like just over in the brain section, like waiting to see what happened with him. We could only have, and this was in the middle, like near the tail end of COVID times, so it was like 4 to a room that could be in there with him. So, I don't know how they figured that out, but it was an entire community that rallied around this man. in his moment of greatest need and his family's moment of greatest need. He had 4 children, 3 boys, 1 girl, all fairly young, who were freaking out about their dad, and that church community completely rallied around them in a beautiful showing of what it means to be in the kingdom. Because I never saw anyone else get that sort of response. No people who had no faith or anything at all. That was the moment where I saw the most community when I was working at the hospital. And I think that's what we're called to do. Maybe not, maybe not all of us when someone's in the hospital, right? I understand that's not realistic, that's not possible. But we have to be there for each other, because I don't think it's an accident that any of us are here. That every single person who's here today, when we're going to take communion together here in just a few minutes, we are in a time and a place that's been specifically set apart for us to be together. You are not here by accident. You are not going to be taking communion with these people by accident. That God has specifically put you here for this moment. And I don't know why, but I believe that it's something. I believe that there is a specific purpose to it all. There's a specific purpose to you being here. And for us, when we come together at the table, that there's a purpose to it. There are no accidental trips here. So when we do come together at this table here in just a few minutes, let's not take it lightly, but let's give it the weight and the attention that it's due. So in just a couple minutes here, I promised it was going to be pretty short. What we're going to do, we're going to come together at the Lord's table. I'm going to break the bread for us. And we're going to come together at the table. Becca is going to come up and we're going to play together. I don't want us to treat it like we kind of normally treat ministry time, where it feels really regimented and that we're kind of scared to do things. When I was talking to Becca about it this morning, I described it as like a cocktail hour at a wedding. When we are coming together at the table in a really casual manner. There's going to be music and words. Don't worry about them too much, right? That I believe that the Lord wants to come and to meet his people in specific ways this morning that are sort of outside of the bounds of rules and law and everything, but that it's about relationship and tangibly seeing and experiencing him in this place. So as we're coming together this morning, as I was praying, I got 3 specific prompts, I think, for ministry time this morning. So 3 different I'm sorry, it's a 3-point thing. I'm sorry. That's just the way my brain works. I think the Lord knows that. That's how he meets me. So I apologize for that. So here are the 3 things I felt specifically strongly about. Number 1, if you've come into this place this morning and you're feeling the burden of loneliness or isolation, my plea is that you would not leave with that burden, that you would lay it down at his feet, and that this entire thing, everything that we're doing here, there we go. It exists, partially at least, to make sure that we don't walk out with that. That we are a community, again, that's been specifically set apart to follow the example of Jesus and be in relationship together. There's no reason to leave this place lonely and isolated. There are people here who would want nothing more than to not have you feel that way, truly. So please, if you are entering into this place with that, there will be people around the table with you. Obviously, we'll have some ministry folks up here set up. Don't leave with that burden. That there's no reason for it. We exist to lift that from each other. That this is a place where we long to be in relationship with each other. Like Josh was talking about a couple of weeks ago, of maybe inviting the people to the table who we don't normally invite. If you feel the burden for that, this is a moment to really act on that. And to say, I want to be in relationship with you, even though I don't hardly know a thing about you, even though we go to church together. That we exist to be a body that knows and exists and does life together and does it well. So that's number 1. Number 2, if you've come into this place looking for a transcendent moment of change, that you have tried doing things a specific way and it feels like everything's fallen apart. And you come into this place, Lord, saying, God, I need something to be different. I need something to change because I feel like I'm hurtling towards something I don't want. I don't know what the specifics of that are for you this morning. That sort of feeling, if I can sort of plug myself here for a second, that's the exact sort of feeling that, the song "Stay With Me" came out of. That feeling of like, that bridge. All of my life, I've been chasing these things that aren't God, and I haven't found you there, weirdly enough. And there's emptiness, and I want that to be filled. I want something to change. I need a transformation, God, this morning. I think there's an invitation for that at the table. And then finally, if you've come here this morning and you have never had an encounter, an intangible encounter, where you could leave a space and say, I know God is real, and he was with me today, that he is with us right now, that he is for me, he desires to have a relationship with me. There's an invitation this morning to meet with him at the table, just like he met with his disciples. That is what this all exists for. It exists for us to be in relationship to not just with one another, but with Jesus, who paved the way for us to be set apart, who paved the way for us to be able to have relationship with him.